I guess when you're a political party and social media has turned against you and it's no longer on your side, the only response is to try and pass laws to crack down on social media so they stop letting people speak their minds and trample on people's free speech. And that's exactly what California Democrats are doing with Senate Bill 771. We're going to talk about that and all the legal consequences and why I think it's probably going to be struck down, most likely struck down, and probably never see the light of day. We're going to get into that and more. But first, if you are part of the 72.9% of people who are watching this video who are not subscribed, but you're interested in California politics and all the news, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you're always up to date on all the stories that we discuss on California political news. Also, there is this new function called Hype This Video, which allows you to hype the video so that it helps appear in the algorithm so more people can find us. Let's get into that first story right now.
Major heat online tonight over a proposed California law. It attempts to hold social media companies accountable for threatening content.
But some conservative social media accounts and personalities have been warning that it could severely limit free speech and result in major penalties against people. KCRA3's political director Ashley Zavala is getting the facts on this proposal.
To silence us on social media.
A proposed California law is getting into the center of the free speech debate online. Former reality TV star turned political activist Spencer Pratt posting this video Thursday, urging people to call Governor Newsom to reject Senate Bill 771. The bill specifically targets major social media platforms such as Facebook and X. It would place up to $1 million fines and civil penalties for the role platforms could play in hate crimes by amplifying threatening content or using algorithms that push it. State law already punishes individual people who do so.
I would guarantee you that Newsom thinks me calling him out for letting 12 senior citizens burn alive in Pacific Palisades, I would guarantee him and his social media team would consider that hateful content.
In no way, shape, or form is that accurate.
Ed Howard is the senior legal counsel for the Children's Advocacy Institute at the University of San Diego School of Law. He helped Democratic lawmakers write the proposal.
The First Amendment protects offensive, salacious, insensitive, horrifying, terrible things that people say. The bill is in fact about the right of Mr. Pratt, the right of me, and the right of every single one of your viewers to be protected from threats of violence in response to his speech if those threats of violence would legitimately and reasonably place a regular old person in fear for their lives or being harmed.
Is this an...
Well, I guess this just goes to prove you can find any law professor or lawyer to spew any sort of legal argument, whether it's true or not or unconstitutional. And this is Ed Howard of San Diego, University of San Diego Law School. He drafted the bill, so he wrote it, and he's vehemently protecting it, but we're going to get into arguments as to why this is wholly unconstitutional in a little bit. So, Mr. Howard, buckle up.
To have the government dictate what social media companies can keep up or down.
No, it's the other way around. Look, one thing that ought to unite everybody on the political spectrum is nobody should be trusting the social media platforms.
Nobody should be trusting that. I want to ask, I would love to hear what Mr. Howard's take on the social media platforms was back around 2020, 2021, when a lot of people were being deplatformed for asking questions about COVID and the mandates and vaccine mandates. Oh, and the California lockdowns. I wonder where Mr. Howard was then. Did you trust the social media moguls back then? Did you trust social media? Now all of a sudden it's nobody should trust social media, mostly probably because they have or allow speech that he hates. He may call it hate speech, but I like to say it's speech that he hates because he disagrees with it.
Be the guardians of our free speech.
But social media companies are fighting the bill and have warned that it violates the First Amendment.
While the bill seeks to hold platforms accountable for egregious behavior, its structure risks sweeping in protected speech and imposing extraordinary penalties based on subjective judgments about user content, including content the platform did not create.
X's global government affairs account posted, in part, it's alarming that California lawmakers sworn to uphold the Constitution have so brazenly ignored their oath. Governor Gavin Newsom has until October 13th to decide what to do with it. At the state capitol, Ashley Zavala, KCRA 3 News.
Well, we reached out to the governor for comment, and his office told us it did not have one to share, but said they would keep us updated.
All right, so that's Mr. Howard of USD describing sort of his thoughts behind SB 771, because now we know that he is the drafter of this bill. So let's take a look at the bill that Mr. Howard drafted. So this right here is the bill text itself. It's odd. It started off as an education bill, then somehow morphed into what they call gut and amend into this type of bill. It goes on to say, California law prohibits all persons and entities, including corporations, from engaging in, aiding, abetting, or conspiring to commit acts of violence, intimidation, or coercion based on race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, immigration status, or other protected characteristics. These protections are reflected in well-established civil rights statutes. California has a compelling interest. We're going to get into why those two words are very important and why he put those in there, in protecting its residents from targeted threats, violence, and coercive harassment, particularly when directed at historically marginalized groups. That interest is especially acute in light of rising incidents of hate-motivated harm as documented across the state. The Los Angeles County Commission on Human Relations reported in December 2024 that the hate crimes involving anti-immigrant slurs increased 31%. The Human Rights Campaign Center for Countering Digital Hate have documented a 400% rise in anti-LGBTQ plus disinformation and harmful rhetoric on major social media platforms. According to Department of Justice data, anti-Jewish bias events rose by 52.9%. Anti-Islamic bias events rose by 62% in 2023. It goes on to keep talking about this. In light of these trends, the legislature affirms the urgent need to ensure that Californian civil rights protections apply with equal force in the digital sphere. The purpose of this act is not regulate speech. Sure. As long as you put that in there, I guess it's fine, is not to regulate speech or viewpoint, but to clarify that social media platforms, like all other businesses, may not knowingly use their systems to promote, facilitate, or contribute to conduct that violates state civil rights. Then it goes on into the penalties for intentional, knowing, or willful violation of civil penalty of up to $1 million. For a reckless violation of civil penalty, up to $500,000. So we're going to get into all of this and kind of break down some legal arguments from my legal perspective. So Mr. Howard does bring up the First Amendment, but there's something else that I think might be more on point and more controlling regarding SB 771. And that is our own Constitution. And that is the California Constitution, Article 1, Declaration of Rights, Section 2, which says every person may freely speak, write, and publish his or her sentiments on all subjects, being responsible for the abuse of this right. A law may not restrain or abridge liberty of speech or press. So each state has its own constitution, which is the supreme law of that state, sort of like how the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Yes, there is the First Amendment, which is the federal, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of lawsuits regarding using the First Amendment. But I would think that actually using the First Amendment equivalent, it's not called the First Amendment, it's Article 1, Section 2 of the California Constitution under the Declaration of Rights, using this free speech clause or the liberty of speech under the California Constitution might be more of a winning strategy, because believe it or not, the free speech or liberty to speech clause under the California Constitution is wider than that of the First Amendment, meaning it protects even way more speech, and they did that on purpose. And there is a case law on point that I'm going to read a little bit from you. This is from the Supreme Court of California. This is in Robbins v. Pruneyard. This is back in the 70s. And it says, though the framers could have adopted the words of the Federal Bill of Rights, they chose not to do so. And there's a specific reason why they did. And it's because they wanted to make your right to free speech even bigger than the First Amendment. So for all those things that Mr. Howard says when he was driving, the First Amendment protects this speech and offensive speech and hateful speech and salacious speech. Well, guess what? The California Constitution goes on and protects even more than that. So maybe he should have checked, the Constitution of his own state before he drafted this bill. Maybe he forgot that there is actually a California Constitution and there is a clause about the liberty of speech. Special protections thus accord speech are marked in this court's opinions. For instance, noted that, quote, a protective provision more definitive and inclusive than the First Amendment is contained in our state constitutional guarantee of the right of free speech and press, end quote. Past decisions on speech and private property testify to the strength of, quote, liberty of speech, end quote, in this state. Diamond 1, which is a different case, held that distributing leaflets and soliciting initiative signatures at a shopping center are constitutionally protected. So the real kind of nexus, the point of that case law is, one, I wanted to show you that the California Supreme Court recognizes that the framers of our California Constitution made the freedom of speech or the liberty of speech clause broader than First Amendment. That was the framers' intent to do so. They wanted it to protect more speech. And this Supreme Court case protects speech at private forums. So this was a shopping mall, which could be a public forum in a way. It's private property, but people do gather at a shopping mall. This was back in the 70s. Now we have social media companies that quite literally the whole point of them is to set them up and have billions of people go on social media platforms and speak and exercise their right to speech. So would this apply in this case? I would think so, because it does protect speech under private forums or that are used as public forums. So already you have Supreme Court case law here in California that would probably overturn SB 771. There are some other legal theories that I do want to talk about real quick, and I don't want to try and bore you with all of this. I want to just kind of give you an idea so that you can go tell people why this is unconstitutional and give you guys the education behind it. One reason is because it is what they call vague. And when something is vague when it regards First Amendment legislation or anything that is regulating speech, if you do not specifically say what kind of speech you are regulating, then it is deemed as unconstitutional. It's probably deemed it's unconstitutional under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. It's unconstitutional under the California Constitution. And this specific bill, if you saw it, goes into talk about this, that, hateful, harmful, blah, 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 blah. All of that stuff. It's vague as to specifically what kind of speech, because it's a subjective standard. You could look at it and say, well, I don't think that's hateful or offensive. But somebody else may look at it and go, well, yeah, that's absolutely hateful and harmful, and it's going to incite violence against somebody. I wonder where someone like Ed Howard landed on the fact that there's people on social media who are celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk and stuff like that. I wonder where he stands on that, inciting violence and all that. But that vagueness is one reason it could be struck down, is because we don't really know what type of speech you're talking about. And as a citizen, you don't know what type of speech you can't say. And if you have no idea what type of speech you can't say, it is an abridgment or a violation, restraint on your free speech, or in California, your liberty to free speech. Another thing is this thing called chilling. When something chills free speech, then it is also unconstitutional. Chilling means that if you are afraid you're going to get penalized for something, for saying something, then it has a chilling effect. And when it has a chilling effect, that is a unconstitutional violation or restraint on your right to free speech, probably under the First Amendment and also under the California Constitution. So those two legal theories by themselves could be reasons why this is struck down, why I believe it's probably going to be struck down. But I'm sure the army of lawyers that social media companies are going to hire will definitely go into these legal theories and more. I hope they actually bring up a California constitutional claim for the liberty of speech. But there is one more thing that I think might get this overturned, and this is a federal law that would likely preempt SB 771. And it's a law that we heard a lot about 5 years ago. Someone at the top of the political sphere of influence was calling for the repeal of. That's right. When Donald Trump was calling for the repeal of Section 230, Section 230 might be the law that protects social media companies from SB 771. And this whole argument about Section 230, and I'm not going to get into the whole thing, is that it does protect social media companies for what they publish or what is published on their platform. So if you keep that in place, it protects those social media companies from SB 771, because now they can point to a federal law that says, no, there's a federal law on point that says we can't be held liable for what's put on our platforms. So good luck trying to get around that. We're protected because of Section 230. So like I said at the beginning of this video, it's interesting how the pendulum swings one way or the other. So once social media is on your side, we haven't heard Trump talk about Section 230 at all since he's been reelected, probably because social media changed once Elon bought X, and then Mark Zuckerberg said he's not going to really do any more of the arbitrary policing and fact checking and all that stuff anymore on Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram. Now, all of a sudden, it benefited a lot more people on the right and conservatives, and it probably led to Donald Trump being reelected because there were no restrictions. So now Democrats hate social media, even though probably 4 or 5 years ago they were champions of social media and they wanted to protect these companies under Section 230. So again, it's where the pendulum swings. But California Democrats now know that the pendulum has swung and there is a ton of speech on these social media platforms that they hate. And I call it speech that they hate. They call it hate speech because it's a subjective term. But they're trying to kind of rein it in and bring it back into the days where social media companies would censor people because of whatever speech they didn't like, X, Y, and Z. They put up all these different, qualifiers and stuff like that. But I still think that at the end of the day, this is most likely never going to see the light of day. I don't think it's ever going to go into effect. One, because you have an army of social media attorneys and their law firms who are going to go after this and get it struck down, whether in federal court, state court, which they could bring a claim under the California Constitution in state court. Governor Newsom, it's still on his desk. He hasn't signed it yet. He may not even sign it because it's too much of a hot potato, and he doesn't want to be seen as the presidential candidate who signed off on a law that regulated speech on social media platforms. Again, he's savvy like that as a politician. He keeps an eye on that White House thinking, if I sign this, does it hurt my chances to get into the White House? But those are some reasons I don't think it's going to see the light of day, and it's probably going to get struck down, whether legally in court or whether Governor Newsom doesn't even actually sign it. So with that, let me know your thoughts. Do you think this will ever see the light of day? Do you think that we'll ever see this go into implementation? Do you think Governor Newsom will actually sign it? Or do you think it'll be struck down in court? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you on the next one. Later.